We all start with conviction.
Right.
That deep, unshakable sense that the work we're pouring our lives into, well, that it matters.
That we have momentum.
And that we're being profoundly effective. You see the activity, you feel the purpose, and you think, we've got this. The mission is locked down.
And yet, what our source material repeatedly stresses is this really uncomfortable but necessary truth.
Which is?
That intuition is often a profoundly poor steward of mission effectiveness. What feels busy may not be strategic at all.
And what looks like a short-term win can actually be what quietly eroding your long-term capacity.
Exactly. And that is the gap, that terrifying space between conviction, which is what we feel, and clarity, which is what we can actually discern and prove.
So if you've ever had that quiet, nagging worry that your organization is working harder but making less actual progress, then this deep dive is for you. We're getting into the mission quotient, or MQ.
And MQ evaluation isn't about adding bureaucracy. It's about gaining strategic intelligence. It's a lens, really.
A lens?
Yeah, a practical lens for seeing what is really happening beneath the surface, past all the anecdotal evidence. Our mission today is to define this and operationalize it.
To ask the hard questions.
Right. Is our effectiveness genuinely increasing? And are our systems and our people becoming measurably more capable over time?
And the sources argue that this is now decisive. Complexity from cultural shifts, remote teams, rising expectations.
It's all outpaced our ability to just rely on gut-based judgment.
We need structured clarity, not more constraint. Let's unpack this.
Okay.
So let's start with that hidden cost, the cost of an unexamined mission. Why is it that resisting rigorous assessment or just, relying on surface-level metrics, why is that such a vulnerability?
It creates what the framework calls blind spots that quietly sabotage progress.
Sabotage is a strong word.
It is, but it's accurate. Leaders often instinctively resist deep evaluation because they fear it'll slow things down or expose weakness.
Sure, that makes sense.
But when assessment is anecdotal, based on the loudest voice in the room or the easiest number to count, decisions become based on, anecdotes, not reliable evidence.
And if you're relying on anecdotes, then any growth you see is basically accidental.
Exactly. It's not intentional. You don't know why something worked, so you have no idea how to repeat it or scale it effectively.
Right.
And the cost isn't some sudden catastrophic collapse. It's subtle, it's drift. You see teams working incredibly hard late nights, tons of activity.
But they feel totally unclear about whether they're actually moving the needle.
That's it. It's the exhaustion of effort without clarity.
And that must filter up to leadership.
Right.
If your feedback is incomplete, you just start repeating strategies that feel good.
Even if the results have totally plateaued or gotten worse, you see these repeating patterns of burnout.
And it's not because people aren't committed.
Not at all. It's because they lack any systemic insight into their own limitations. The drift is masked by all that operational activity. The sources are clear. Evaluation, when done well, is maybe the most underutilized strategic asset any organization has.
But I want to push on that a little. If we're all so busy, how do we stop this from just becoming another layer of corporate bureaucracy?
That is the crucial reframing MQ offers. We have to position assessment not as judgment or fear, but as stewardship.
Stewardship.
The disciplined care of your people, your purpose, and your practice. The sources even frame it as an act of love. You can't faithfully steward what you don't first assess.
So it replaces guesswork with actual insight.
And gives you the freedom to say no to all that peripheral activity.
The goal is to generate insight, not just data. That feels like a pivotal shift.
It is, and once evaluation is anchored in that idea of faithful stewardship, it becomes a tool that accelerates effectiveness. It doesn't slow it down.
Okay, let's move to the core framework then. Defining mission quotient. The sources really stress this is not about importing some standard corporate performance system.
No, it's about honoring both stories and data. It integrates that deep qualitative insight with quantitative metrics.
So how does this framework actually prevent us from just reducing our mission to a spreadsheet of numbers?
Because MQ functions as a holistic diagnostic lens, not a simplistic score. It recognizes that mission integrity is, it's multidimensional.
You're not just measuring isolated activities.
No, you're assessing the condition of the mission across 4 integrated domains. And misalignment in even one of these just compromises the health of the entire thing.
Okay, walk us through these 4 domains. This feels like the foundation of the whole diagnosis.
First, we have conviction. This is the theological coherence.
The why.
Exactly. Is the mission biblically grounded, clearly defined, and fundamentally sound? Without strong conviction, the organization is just chasing trends.
Okay, so conviction is the foundation of purpose. What follows that?
Second is capacity. Are the people, the financial resources, the operational structures, are they sufficient and sustainable for the task at hand?
And here's the connection the sources make, right? Strong conviction without capacity.
Leads directly to exhaustion and breakdown. People burn out not because they lack passion, but because the structure itself is unsustainable.
That's so practical. Capacity isn't just about the budget. It's about emotional labor, the number of direct reports a leader has, the resilience of the whole system.
Absolutely. But then you have to introduce the third domain, character.
Okay.
This asks whether humility, integrity, and spiritual health are evident in leadership and infused into the culture.
And if you have tremendous capacity, all the talent, money, systems, but you lack character.
What happens? That capacity becomes an engine for compromise, for scandal, or just for serving self-interest instead of the mission.
That makes perfect sense. So character acts as the guardrail for capacity. What's the final piece?
Contextual discernment. This is the mission's intelligence quotient, in a sense. Is the organization wisely engaging its specific cultural, historical, and relational environment?
So it's not just knowing demographics.
No, it's adapting how the mission is incarnated into the specific reality it serves.
So let me follow the logic here. Capacity without character invites compromise. But the sources also say that character without contextual discernment can result in irrelevance. Can you clarify that?
Yeah. An organization can be filled with highly virtuous, deeply committed people, strong character.
Sure.
But if they fail to listen to and understand the context they're in, they just end up talking to themselves. They miss cultural shifts, they use outdated language, they apply irrelevant solutions to real problems.
So their faithfulness gets locked inside their own walls.
And their purpose becomes ineffective externally.
So that four-part diagnostic conviction, capacity, character, and contextual discernment, that defines the condition of the mission. But the framework also says effectiveness is dynamic, right? It's never fixed.
That is key. MQ evaluation recognizes the need for faithful adaptation. It honors the biblical pattern, like the Apostolic Church in Acts 6. They faced a structural problem, the neglect of widows. And they didn't just double down on the old way, they restructured leadership to ensure the mission continued effectively.
That's what dynamic reality means for MQ.
Exactly.
So if the four domains tell us about the condition of the mission, now we need to talk about the fruit. We said that MQ assessment resists the tyranny of the urgent.
Meaning just counting butts and seats or dollars raised and the seduction of the impressive?
Right.
Yes, the sources are so insistent on this. Not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be quickly counted.
Which means we have to use what the framework calls kingdom-aligned metrics. New dimensions of fruitfulness that reflect a deeper transformation.
We have to track things that are often invisible to a traditional balance sheet.
Okay, let's dive into these 6 dimensions. Starting with the one that feels foundational but invisible. Spiritual formation. This sounds so personal. Why track it organizationally?
Because the spiritual health of the individual is the very foundation of your collective capacity and culture. This metric measures observable growth in Christ-likeness, obedience, consistency, and disciplines.
Prayer, scripture engagement, that sort of thing.
Right. An organization can't sustainably call others to transformation if its own internal life is neglected. And it's the consistency, not just the initial fervor, that this metric is tracking.
That makes the next metric, relational health, absolutely critical. How do you even measure something like trust or collaboration?
Well, you look at accountability, mutual care, the level of psychological safety. Are people willing to speak the truth without fear? The early church in Acts devoted themselves to fellowship.
So relational dissonance, unaddressed conflict, low trust.
Those are massive mission eroders. You can track this quantitatively, maybe with anonymous surveys on fairness or communication, but you have to back it up with stories of actual conflict resolution.
Okay, moving from the internal to the external, we have missional alignment.
Alignment is really the measure of focus. It tracks the clarity of your purpose and whether your resources are dedicated to high-impact initiatives.
It's about distinguishing the core calling from all the peripheral activity.
Yes. The things that are good, but ultimately a distraction. The sources connect activity without alignment to the parable of the talent's busyness that produces no real fruit. You have to know which projects move the mission forward and which are just momentum fillers.
And the fourth metric is cultural intelligence. This sounds like the hardest one to measure objectively.
It is, but it's vital. This evaluates the ministry's ability to listen, adapt, and incarnate its presence effectively. It's Paul's model, becoming all things to all people.
So if you're misaligned with your context,
you get superficial outcomes. You might attract people who look just like you, but you completely fail to reach the community you're meant to serve. This metric means measuring the diversity of your outreach, the accessibility of your language, and the relevance of how you deliver your services.
let's talk about endurance. We mentioned burnout earlier, and that brings us to sustainability. What does that cover?
Sustainability assesses resilience over time. It includes financial prudence, sure, but crucially, it focuses on the health of your people.
Are we creating margin to prevent emotional exhaustion?
Do we have intentional leadership development? Is there succession plan? The sources point to Jesus modeling this by intentionally withdrawing to pray. Sustainable ministry views rest in development not as liabilities, but as necessary strategic assets.
You can't run a mission on fumes.
You can't. And if an organization is strong in all 5 of those areas, the 6th metric becomes the ultimate test.
Multiplication.
Yes, multiplication is the reproductive capacity of the organization. Are disciples making new disciples? Are leaders reproducing other leaders? Is there local ownership of the mission?
This is the difference between addition, just getting more members, and multiplication.
Exactly. It's generating new, self-sustaining movements. It measures if your effectiveness is exponential and generational.
So we have the holistic framework, we have the 6 critical metrics. Now we have to move from just insight to action. And MQ evaluation, it inevitably reveals blind spots.
And this revelation is so critical because blind spots grow most dangerously in the soil of apparent success.
Proximity breeds invisibility.
That's it. When everything seems fine, leaders can become complacent. It's like the church in Laodicea in Revelation saying, I have prospered, I need nothing, not realizing their own poverty. Assessment rooted in humility is the act of grace that interrupts that self-deception.
And to bridge that gap between our sincerity, our good intentions, and our actual skill, feedback is non-negotiable, but it has to be formative, not punitive. How does NQ ensure that?
By establishing feedback as a spiritual practice, not a mechanism for assigning blame, leaders have to model humility and self-examination. The Apostle Paul talks about disciplining his own body, lest I myself should be disqualified.
So if leadership sees the results as a chance to learn,
the whole culture will embrace it. If leaders get defensive, the mission stalls.
And the evaluation itself must be integrative. It's not enough to just look at one side of the coin.
No, you absolutely have to hold the tension between the quantitative data and the qualitative insights.
Numbers and the stories.
Right. The quantitative gives you scale and efficiency, attendance, budget ratios, completion rates. But the qualitative gives you depth, context, and the stories of transformation. The subjective experience of spiritual growth, the nuanced cultural shifts, the real impact on one life.
So you need a 360-degree view.
Or you'll celebrate high attendance while completely ignoring a breakdown in relational trust.
For instance, your quantitative data might show a high efficiency score, but your qualitative data on relational health reveals your best leaders are leaving from exhaustion.
That tension is exactly what MQ is designed to surface, and the assessment is only valuable if it leads to change. That's where continuous improvement plans, or CIPs, come in.
CIPs translate that reflection into obedient action. Explain the cycle for us.
It's a continuous rhythm. First, you observe the data from the evaluation. Second, you discern what it means, which takes community, prayer, humility. Third, you act strategically, making the hard decisions based on that truth. And finally, you monitor and iterate.
It's a cycle that guards against mission drift.
It forces the organization to respond to reality, not just memory.
And if we wrap this all up, what is the leadership posture required to actually implement MQ successfully?
It really boils down to 2 virtues. First, humility, the willingness to be assessed, even if it contradicts your favorite story about your organization. And second, courage, the willingness to make tough decisions based on truth, not popularity. MQ demands leaders who are learners first.
This whole deep dive really shows us that MQ evaluation can transform assessment from this grudging obligation into a genuine strategic advantage.
It really does. It shifts an organization from being merely active to being truly effective and strategically aligned with its core calling.
What is not assessed cannot be faithfully stewarded.
And evaluation, when it's rooted in this MQ framework, it provides the clarity that ultimately frees obedience. It's about ensuring the mission stays true over the long haul.
It provides the capacity, clarity, and resilience for the mission to endure. Now, for the final provocative thought we want to leave you with, the question worth sitting with this week is this.
If you continue with your current methods, where will your mission be in 5 years? Now imagine having the tools to respond to that question with confidence, with foresight, and with a clear plan for resilient, focused adaptation. That is the true promise of mission quotient evaluation.